Hello and welcome to Watch Releases Recap for the week of January 17th until January the 24th. Today we have a lot of watches to get through, so let's begin with Nomos and their new Ludwig Neomatik limited edition in partnership with Doctors Without Borders. Viewers of my YouTube channel don't really need an introduction to Nomos watches, and I personally am a big fan of this German watch brand. You probably also don't need an introduction to Doctors Without Borders charity organization, and over the years Nomos has partnered up with this charity quite a few times. This year for 2025 they are releasing two limited edition watches based on their Ludwig watch design in two different case sizes. Each version is limited to 250 pieces and is essentially a slightly modified existing model with the highlighted Roman numerals at the 12 o'clock position in red. The rest of the dial is very monochrome, very clean, sharp design of this watch. I stated in various videos previously, I'm a big fan of this type of collaboration where it's a very subtle collaboration. You don't have a huge logo on the dial or anything like that. So if you like the design itself, you can just go ahead and buy this watch and you get an advantage or a benefit of supporting Doctors Without Borders. Speaking of which, the only other nod to this organization is actually at the bottom of the dial, where it would usually say Made in Germany. Now it says Doctors Without Borders in German. The cases of these watches stayed pretty much the same as standard models. One comes in a 36.4mm case diameter, the other one comes in a 38.5mm case diameter. Both of them are about 50mm in case height, and both of them feature 50 meters of water resistance. As far as the movement goes, these ones are powered by the DUW 3001 in-house automatic movement. It beats at 21,600 vibrations per hour. It has 27 joules and 43 hours of power reserve. And usually Nomos gives you an option to either have the watch with a closed case back or a display case back. On these versions, you only get a display case back, which is a great call because if you're buying a Nomos, get the one with an open case back. You really want to see that movement. As far as the limited edition and pricing goes, as I mentioned, they're both limited to 250 pieces for each version, and they're priced at 2,880 euro for the 36mm version and 3,050 euro for the 38mm version. The new Aquastar Benthos Heritage 2. The Benthos 500 was one of these legendary diver watches back in 1970s. It was a bit of an innovation at a time because this was a diver watch with a 60-minute chronograph function, so you could time your dives more precisely. That's why it had that fourth big orange hand on a dial. And in 2020, this brand has sort of came back to life because the quartz crisis weren't so kind to Aquastar, and ever since they have been releasing a few models here and there. Most notably, they released the Benthos 500 Founders Edition. That watch was very faithful to the original from 1970s, but it was also on a more expensive side. Well, now for 2025, we have a Benthos Heritage 2, and according to the company, their vision for this watch was sort of what would happen if they didn't actually go out of business and if they continued to innovate on that heritage watch back in 1970s. And what they think they would have done, they would have removed that chronograph complication, the 60-minute orange chronograph hand, and made the watch slimmer and smaller. And actually the result of that is quite attractive. So first of all, the case has shrunk quite a bit. That's actually the biggest change outside of that fourth hand emission. So now the case features a 40mm diameter. It's only 11.9mm in case height. It's about 4mm thinner than the previous version of this watch, which is a huge difference in terms of the case height. This one here wears more like an everyday diver. It is also pretty good in terms of lug-to-lug distance, only about 44mm. Now you probably noticed that this watch still features two crowns, even though it doesn't have the chronograph function anymore. So what is that second crown by the 2 o'clock position for? Well, that's actually a helium escape valve, and I think that's going to be one of the bigger dividing points in terms of the design of this watch. A lot of people don't like helium escape valves, but I actually think on this watch it works because they had to continue with this sort of design language that they have created back in 1970s. So on this watch specifically, I think it makes sense, even though realistically speaking, you don't really need a helium escape valve on a watch like this with only 300 meters of water resistance. This watch also comes with a 120 click unidirectional ceramic bezel insert. These ones are powered by the Sellita SW200-1. It's an automatic movement that beats at 28,800 vibrations per hour. It has 26 joules and about 38 hours of power reserve. The best part about this watch is actually the pricing, in my opinion. So if you pre-order them, you can get one for around 1200 USD on the strap or around 1300 USD on the bracelet. The new MING 37.09 Uni Dive watch. In my opinion, MING is one of the most interesting watch brands on the market right now because they're not that old in terms of their heritage. However, they already established a pretty clear design language in the industry, which is not easy to do because watches have existed for so long. So how do you innovate? Well, last year they probably released one of their most innovative watches to date. It was this diver watch called 37.09 Blue Fin. And what was really interesting about it is that it didn't actually look like a diver watch. It looked like this sort of futuristic dress watch or something like that. It featured a really amazing lume and this blue color scheme. Based on that design language, this year for 2025, we're getting essentially the same watch with a black color scheme and a black DLC coated case. The case is still the same dimensions and is still made out of stainless steel. It's about 38 millimeters in case diameter. It is also about 12.8 millimeters in case height. The lug-to-lug distance is about 44.5 millimeters. So this one should wear comfortably on majority of wrists. What's super impressive about these watches is that they're really thin, around 13 millimeters in case height, and they feature a display case back. However, they also come with a very respectable water resistance rating, 600 meters, and they offer this sort of inner rotating bezel-like feature. I'm not exactly going to call it a bezel because it's not necessarily a bezel. It is just part of the dial that rotates but creates a similar effect to a timing bezel on a diver watch. And you can regulate it through the crown at the 4 o'clock position, the crown at the 2 o'clock position. That's the crown to interact with the movement. And by the way, these watches are powered by a customized Sellita SW300-1. It's an automatic high beat movement that beats at 28,800 vibrations per hour. It has about 50 hours of power reserve. And in terms of the pricing of this watch, that's the part that I'm not a huge fan of. It is a limited edition to only 150 pieces, and the price is 5,250 Swiss francs, which is about 5,800 USD. I think that's a very steep price for this watch. Yes, it looks really cool. Yes, it's very unique, but almost 6 grand for this watch. I don't know. I think it's too much. The new Hamilton Jazzmaster Performer Auto Chrono. I think Hamilton lately hasn't been getting a lot of spotlight on them, which is a bit of a shame because they are an amazing brand with amazing heritage. The Jazzmaster model line is legendary at this point. They have so many different versions, including different versions of the Chrono. For this year, for 2025, there is a new chronograph that is sort of El Primero inspired with that pop of blue at the 6 o'clock position. And overall, I quite like the design of this watch. Now, admittedly, one of the reasons why Hamilton chronograph watches are not more popular is because of the case dimensions. The designs are very often very attractive, but the case dimensions just turn a lot of people off. So this watch here is no exception. It's a bit on the larger side, 42 millimeter diameter by about 15.2 millimeters in case height, so it's a bit on the thicker side, and it comes in a stainless steel case that's PVD coated. This watch impressively features 100 meters of water resistance, and it is powered by the Hamilton Caliber H31, which is essentially a modified ETA 7753 that has 28 joules. It beats at 28,800 vibrations per hour and has about 60 hours of power reserve, which is pretty good. In terms of a design, this watch is very attractive in my opinion. I'm not a huge fan of that exposed date wheel. The aperture is around 430, so that's how you actually read what date it is. But I don't think it necessarily needs it. I mean, yes, it makes it stand out a bit more from the competition, but the inclusion of that blue subdial at the 6 o'clock position, I think would have been enough. So if they hid that exposed date wheel, I probably would like this watch a lot more. The price of it is quite attractive, so it's not a limited edition, it's part of the standard collection, and these watches are priced at around 2,300 USD. The new Swatch and Blancpain Scuba 50 Fathoms Pink Ocean. I'm not going to waste too much time talking about this watch because it's essentially the Blancpain and Swatch collaboration, now in a pink dial on a pink strap. That's pretty much it. Everything else about the Swatch stayed exactly the same. The case is still made out of bioceramic. It still comes in 42.3 millimeters diameter, about 14.4 millimeters case height. It comes with 91 meters or 50 fathoms of water resistance. It is still powered by the same Systems 51 mechanical automatic winding movement that beats at 21,600 vibrations per hour, and it has 90 hours of power reserve. And it is not a limited edition. It will be part of the standard catalog, if you will. So you can get it at select Swatch stores, and the price of this watch is the same, €400. And the reason why I wanted to talk about this release is not because it's anything special, because it's not, it's just a pink watch, but more so my observation and the fact that I haven't really seen too many of this Swatch Blancpain collaboration watches out in the wild, if you will, over the last year and a half. I've probably seen one, and that's about it. And I just wanted to ask you guys in the comments, have you seen these watches out in the wild? I see the Moon Swatch all the time, but this watch almost never. I mean, I probably have seen it only once, as I said. The Christopher Ward C65 Dune Aeolian collection. To many, Christopher Ward represents this new wave of watch companies that offer great value for money. They don't necessarily have to be in a high price point to offer high quality. The C65 is a very popular collection in Christopher Ward's lineup, and now it got this Dune spin on it. To be exact, this watch is actually based on a limited edition piece that was released about 2 years ago, and now it will be part of the standard catalog with a few different editions. So first of all, you have the stainless steel models that come in a very reasonable 38mm diameter. They're about 44mm from one lug to another, and in terms of the case height, they're about 12mm. So these ones are great sort of field watches, go anywhere, do anything type timepieces. Well, now it's available in a few different color combinations, and it features this pattern on the dial that's supposed to look like sand or sand dunes. And of course, that is the most represented on the sand color dial. The gray dial also looks pretty attractive. The blue and the green, it's kind of hard to tell. They're supposed to be inspired by sand dunes. This version will also now be available with a bronze case and a chocolate or a green dial. I actually really like how these watches look. They're a little bit more expensive because they come in bronze cases, and also they come with the COSC certified movements. So the stainless steel versions range between €950 to about €1,065. These bronze versions range between €1,220 all the way to around €1,665 with a bronze bracelet. And lastly, we have a couple of GMT models. Now, these models don't feature that Dune-like pattern to the dial. They have a more sort of standard grainy finish to the dial. They also feature a GMT hour scale around the dial. This one comes in two different versions, the blue one and the creamy one, and they're priced between €1,250 to €1,465, depending on which version you choose. Now, in terms of the movements, these ones are all powered by the versions of Stellita movement, SW200 or the SW330, depending on which version you go. For the GMT version, that's the 330 movement, and for the time only, that's the Stellita SW200 movement. This week was also the LVMH Fashion Week, so I actually got quite a few releases from Hublot, Zenith, and Tag Heuer, the LVMH brands. We're not going to talk about all the releases because there are quite a few. I'm just going to highlight some of the ones that stood out to me personally. So first of all, let's talk about Zenith and their new Chronomaster Sport Rainbow in white gold. And the only reason why I wanted to bring up this watch, because first of all, it is kind of ridiculous, right? It features baguette diamonds on the dial, and it also features these cut sapphires in a rainbow pattern on the bezel. It is made out of white gold, as the name would suggest, and it is a very expensive watch, as you can imagine. But of course, the elephant in the room here is that this watch is a straight up copy of the Rolex Rainbow Daytona, isn't it? Which is kind of strange, and the reason why this watch intrigues me so much is because it's not cheap. It's not a limited edition, so it could be yours if you really want one, and it costs around $115,000 USD. You're spending $100,000 plus for an homage watch to the Daytona, it's just strange, right? It's like, why would you do that? For 100 grand plus, you can get so many other watches that are just fantastic watches. You can get multiples of fantastic watches for this price. Why would you get a watch that looks like a ripoff of a Daytona? Just mind-boggling. But there's another release from Zenith that I want to talk about, the Defy Skyline Chronograph with skeleton dials. This new model is essentially a take on an existing model now available with the skeletonized dial and a slightly different movement. So this watch still comes in the same case, 42mm in case diameter, around 12.7mm in case height, which is actually pretty impressive. It's not an overly thick watch, even though it is powered by an automatic El Primero caliber 3600 SK. SK is the skeletonized version of the El Primero 3600, so it features more sort of exposed design elements to the dial, so you can see more of the movement through the case back and the OpenWorks dial. But the rest of the specs of this watch are exactly the same as the standard 3600. It beats at 36,000 vibrations per hour, and it has 60 hours of power reserve. Now this watch is available with a couple of different dial combinations. You have the gray one and the blue one, and both of them are attractive enough, although I don't know why on this watch specifically the skeletonized design kind of cheapens the look almost. Again, it seems like this watch is trying to be an homage to something else, and it's not quite nailing it perfectly. And I don't want to give you an impression that I'm discounting the quality of Zenith cases or their movements. It's just design-wise, I don't know, it just feels weird. It doesn't feel cohesive, not my cup of tea. Let me know what you think about this design in the comment section below. These watches will not be a limited edition. They're part of the standard catalog, and they're priced around 15,000 Swiss francs, or around 17,000 USD. Now let's talk about a different LVMH brand, Tag Heuer, and they had a few releases this week. First, let's talk about their new Formula One collection of mechanical chronographs. Last year, we found out that LVMH signed a 10-year deal with Formula One to be the official timekeeper and the official sponsor. And I, for one, was very excited about this move because of releases like this. The problem, to me personally, with Rolex being a sponsor of F1 is that Rolex is too rigid and too conservative about their designs. They're very protective over their designs, and that's why a lot of people like them, but that also makes them kind of boring. Over the years, we haven't really seen any special Formula One edition of their watches, which is a bit of a shame because that would have been fun to see. Well, Tag Heuer, on the other hand, is no stranger to releasing questionable and funky releases, and that's why a lot of watch collectors love them, including myself. Now, Tag Heuer Formula One collection is legendary. It started many years ago, and it goes through different design variations and different periods, and it's actually really fun to see how this collection has evolved over the years, because you can clearly see 90s inspired in one collection, and you can clearly see 2000s inspired in a different collection. And now for 2025, we have an all-new collection with 4 different watches available. Plus, on top of these 4 watches, there is one special Red Bull Oracle edition, because of course, Tag Heuer is the official sponsor for Red Bull Racing F1 team. So not only are they a sponsor for the whole F1, but they're also sponsoring one team specifically. So that's why they have this special edition with Red Bull Racing, and that's actually the most expensive edition. Now, all watches come in titanium cases. Some are DLC coated, some are not, and these are pretty large watches. 44mm case diameter by around 14mm in case height. The case height is alright actually for an automatic chrono, but the 44mm diameter, it is very Tag Heuer, isn't it? It's sort of giving you a little bit, but not everything that you would want. Make this watch in maybe 40mm and it will be a lot more successful, at least in my opinion. But no, they have to make it like this. The other sort of questionable design element, to me at least, having that speed written across the bezel, it's so on the nose. Again, it's so Tag Heuer that on one hand, I personally don't like it, but on the other hand, I really like it. I really like that they chose to do that, because Again, it is so on brand for Tag Heuer. It does feature this sort of angular, aggressive case design, which is supposed to be inspired by modern F1 cars. The other part of the watch that I really enjoy is 200 meters of water resistance, which makes this sort of a true sports watch. A lot of chronograph watches come with 50 meters of water resistance, and even though they're sports watches, are they actually? And I'm looking at you, Speedmasters. So having 200 meters of water resistance is great. Now these ones are powered by the caliber 16, which is essentially a modified ETA 7750. It beats at 28,800 vibrations per hour. It has 25 joules and 42 hours of power reserve. A bit of a shame about the movement choice because Tag Heuer has better chronograph movements available, but I think a bit of a money saving going on here by choosing this movement. And in terms of the available color variations, my favorite is this black with yellow accents. I actually think that looks quite sharp. The Red Bull Oracle edition is not my favorite. I really don't like the pattern on the dial. That's the actually most expensive version, priced at $5,450. Then you have the other ones, the DLC coded, are priced at $4,900 USD. And the non-DLC coded ones are around $4,700 USD. The new Tag Heuer Carrera Chronosprint in collaboration with Porsche. Tag Heuer and Motorsport collaborations continue with this release. Actually, we saw a very similar watch released, I think, last year or the year before. It was done in a white color and it featured this one party trick where the chronograph seconds would speed up and then it would sort of slow down and complete the rest of the rotation in a minute as it's supposed to. So it featured a sort of non-linear display of time passing. Well, this new 2025 version done in all black features the same party trick, but now the highlighted area is 8.4. That is a reference to 8.4 seconds. That's how long it took for the very first Porsche 911 to reach 100 kilometers an hour, which is kind of a nice nod. Also, the other design elements of this watch are very vintage race car inspired, like for example, the subdial at the 6 o'clock position that looks like an old school speedometer. And of course, the way this seconds hand goes around the dial, especially those first 20 seconds or so, it kind of looks like a revs counter on a sports car. When you floor the car, the revs gauge goes quite fast and then it kind of slows down and becomes more smooth the higher in the rev range you get. And it's the same sort of idea behind this design element. The other design element of this watch that I quite like is the design of the case. So this one comes in that glass box case design that was introduced a few years back. I'm a big fan because it wears really well on the wrist, even though it features a larger case diameter, around 42 millimeters by around 14.9 millimeters in case height. So this one is on the thicker side, but it does have that domed sapphire crystal, which takes up quite a bit of real estate. So on the wrist, this one actually wears pretty well. And this watch is available in two different materials. There's the stainless steel version and there's the yellow gold version. The stainless steel version is limited to 900 pieces and it's priced at 10,000 Swiss francs. The yellow gold version is limited to only 11 pieces and it's priced at 24,000 Swiss francs. And that's it for this week's releases. These are the watches that I wanted to highlight. I appreciate you watching this video all the way until the end. If you enjoyed it, give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the YouTube channel for more videos like this in the future, and leave a comment in the comment section below. Let me know what watch release stood out to you. I always enjoy reading your comments. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time. Bye.